And what's also very important, you've got to look at the dichotomy between rural and urban landscapes. So in the rural development, you've got poor connectivity, less access to infrastructure, to different platforms. So the question is, how do you ensure there's equitable access both in urban and rural areas? And this is where connection from the skies becomes very important, because now you can reach those previously underserved communities and you're bringing connectivity right to the doorstep.
Hello Space Watchers, I'm Emma, the editor-in-chief of SpaceWatch.Global, and this is a new episode of Space Café Radio, your radio channel dedicated to emerging trends and live conferences in the space sector. Today's episode is part of our coverage of the Connecting the World from the Skies Forum, which was held in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia between the 8th and the 10th of November 2022. The conference was hosted by ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, and CST, the Communication, Space and Technology Commission of Saudi Arabia. The forum was developed around the theme of connecting the unconnected, aka the challenge to bring internet to those 2.7 billion people who still don't have it. It also included some important indication of where Saudi Arabia wants to place itself within the global space economy, the direction it wants to follow, the vision it would like to develop, and the investment it's intending to pursue. In a sort of sense, was a one-of-a-kind of a conference, both with its messages and its meta-political messages. Enjoy these insights. Hello and welcome to our radio reportage from Connecting the World from the Skies Forum. Our guest speaker is Valanathan Munsami, Senior Advisor to the CEO of the Saudi Space Agency. Can I call you Val?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Val, thank you for being here with me. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
So my first question is personal. You moved very recently from South Africa to Saudi Arabia. So what made you make this move?
So I've been working in South Africa in the policy landscape for almost 25 years. And I've gotten used to the system and reached at a very senior level in terms of an executive position. So I needed to find new opportunities, new room for growth. And Saudi Arabia was just the place to be.
So I know you cannot reveal much about the Saudi Arabia space strategy because it will be published next year. But I would like you to help me to trace some guidelines, a sort of general direction of where Saudi is going and why it's moving towards a certain direction and which are the challenges it will be facing. So maybe let's start from the Saudi vision. I heard you saying before that the kingdom is moving from a resource-based economy to a knowledge-based economy. Can you explain better how this is influencing the vision that Saudi Arabia has of itself and its space industry?
Okay, so you have to take a look at the economic structure of Saudi Arabia. It's very oil-based sort of resources, intense. And so obviously the way the world is moving is towards more clean energy. So at some point in time, there's going to be less reliance on oil, not completely, but it'll erode a little bit. So it's an opportune time to think of opportunities for diversification into other sectors. And obviously the space sector is one of those sectors, not only from an economic perspective, but if you look at it from a knowledge-based economy perspective, space is very key to a knowledge-based economy. So it makes just sense in terms of pursuing the space sector, if you look at diversification.
Which are the main points the strategy would like to tackle?
So the kingdom has adopted what is called Vision 2030. And obviously, it's a blueprint in terms of socioeconomic, environmental development in the kingdom. So, for example, you're looking at moving towards net zero carbon emissions by 2040. And the kingdom is looking at planting over 400 million trees, just greening the economy. And
it's going to be interesting in the desert.
It will be.
Challenge.
It will be. And then if you think of all the developments that are happening, for example, the Neom city, which is a line of so over 170 kilometers, it's a smart, modern city. The key question is, how do you bring space applications, products, and services into such a smart city? From a communications connectivity point of view, using Earth observation in terms of monitoring how things are shaping up over time. And then also PNT applications, position, navigation, and timing applications. You're going to have multiple sensors in a smart city. So how do you locate where they are? And then how do you ensure that the sensors can communicate to a central repository and operations base? And that requires connectivity. So it's capture, store, and forward into an operation so you can see what's happening on the ground. So now you're bringing space into a smart city. That's a classic application. So you're seeing space now as opposed to just looking from economic diversification. It has value in terms of how it improves the people's lives and drive economic growth as well.
So it's not space for space, but space as a tool to realize a new path in terms of economical development.
Exactly, yeah.
You mentioned telemedicine, teleeducation, telebanking. So the attention, again, is not only on communication, but also on tangible application that can support a use of space for the local economy. Is this correct?
That is correct. The communications backbone is just exactly that. It's a backbone. It's a conduit, but what you do with it is something else. And this is where you can bring essentially products and services through that conduit. And what's also very important, you've got to look at the dichotomy between rural and urban landscapes. So in the rural development, you've got poor connectivity, less access to infrastructure, to different platforms, digital platforms as an example. So the question is, how do you ensure there's equitable access both in urban and rural areas? And this is where connectivity, connection from the skies, becomes very important, because now you can reach those previously underserved communities, essentially. And you're bringing connectivity right to the doorstep. And that allows a whole suite of other development aspects. For example, as you mentioned, access to health, telemedicine, access to education, teleeducation, access to banking, and so on. And so now you're stimulating the local economy by ensuring microfinancing, the transactions can happen. The digital economy is now reaching the rural community. So obviously bringing more people into the mainstream economy. And that's essentially what you're looking for, is economic growth, improving the quality of lives of people. And this is a fantastic way of doing that.
Is there already some project connected to telemedicine or teleeducation that you are already developing?
So that's essentially on the cards, and that's what we're exploring at the moment, those kinds of applications, and how we bring them into the kingdom.
Let's speak about challenges. From your experience, you come from another space reality, the one from South Africa. Which are the major challenges that the kingdom will have to face to realize this vision?
Yeah. So the strategy for the space sector is quite ambitious. To be quite honest, I was very surprised. It's a massive aspiration. And so if you look at it from a heritage point of view, there's been some heritage in the kingdom. So if you look at Arabsat, from a communications perspective, Saudi Arabia has been a leader from that perspective. And then when you're looking at it from an Earth observation point of view, they've developed a whole suite of satellites in the kingdom. But where we're taking all of this now is a step change. Okay. So obviously you have some base competency and infrastructure in the kingdom. But now you're taking it, as I said, to a completely different level. That means you need more skills. You need more infrastructure. But obviously the capital is not a big issue in the kingdom. So you now have to bridge that gap. But we are looking at those kind of issues. So, for example, Space Academy. How do we introduce a platform where people can be educated and skilled or reskilled in the kingdom? So that's addressing the skills deficit. But then you look at from the infrastructure perspective, you need a whole new suite of infrastructure. So you take your current infrastructure as a baseline, which we are currently assessing, and then seeing what the gap is in terms of what's needed for implementing the strategy. And how do we activate that gap in terms of bringing that infrastructure into play?
When you say infrastructure, you mean?
So if you're building satellites, we've been used to building single satellites. So you now need to look at production lines. If you're looking at constellation of satellites, your ground segments. So depending on what missions you're looking at, definitely the ground segment that we have at the moment is not adequate enough to support those kinds of missions. That kind of infrastructure, the data segments for the whole satellite platform. It's not just the data, but how do we use a platform to transform data into usable products and services, into useful information. That transformation, bringing in artificial intelligence, big data into that platform is going to be very critical. So that transformation still needs to happen.
So it's education, so like raising the new generation of space engineers.
That's right.
And building infrastructure.
Yes.
In terms of timescale is crucial. I'm aware that this country is developing with a very fast pace compared to other countries.
Yes.
So taking this into account, what's a reasonable timescale to achieve the goals that the kingdom is in?
So there's a couple of ways of looking at the timescale. Obviously, it's a very compressed time that we're looking for implementation because there's big plans and initiatives on the table. So how do you accelerate some of those? And I think that what's also useful, if you look at what's happening in the kingdom in terms of transformation, gender equity is now promoted to a point where there's more opportunities for female as well in the kingdom. So how do you utilize that skills as well? So I think that provides a wonderful opportunity as well in terms of the skills deficit. The whole idea is the kingdom is transforming, the economy is transforming. So we're all in the same path and we're moving in the same direction. So there's synergy in terms of what needs to happen. So space is just one of many sectors that are being developed. And so there's cross correlation as we move forward. And I think space communications, Earth observation, PNT applications, even the sciences is going to be quite critical in terms of reshaping how we bring those products and services into the kingdom. And obviously you need the infrastructure, the skills, and all of that. So there's two ways of doing that. One, you grow the skills base and the infrastructure organically, which takes much longer. But the other one is with partnerships, more mature partners, bringing them in, shadowing, working, and that's one way of accelerating it as well. And I think those are the kinds of tactics or strategies we're looking at.
Yeah, because 2030 is tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely.
And it takes time to grow an engineer, 30 years of time.
That's true.
You would like to add something that we would like to focus on?
Yeah, and I think globally there might be a very negative perception on Saudi Arabia because of the history and what's been in news in the media and so on. But I think since 2017, 2018, there's been a massive shift. The Crown Prince coming in and bringing up a whole new agenda, transformation, and we're seeing a lot of that. Since arriving in the kingdom, I've been speaking to many of the locals, and they said the changes have been massive. They moved from a completely conservative culture to a more open culture, and I think that's more shifting towards that global positioning as well. So I'm quite excited to be part of that narrative.
I can definitely confirm that the atmosphere is quite light and open. I saw women driving, which is a huge improvement. I'm pleased to see the confirmation of a country that has definitely opened its door.
And there's quite a lot of expats living in Saudi Arabia, which is also very surprising, but exciting as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Val, it was fantastic to have the chance to speak with you, and I hope we will have the chance to catch up again next year after the strategy is out, so maybe we can deepen up a bit our perspective, and you can tell me how is it going.
I'll look forward to that, definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
If you want to keep the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global. Subscribe to our newsletters, and of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Emma Gatti, Editor-in-Chief at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space. See you next time. Ciao.